The vast Veterans Memorial Hall echoed with the soft hum of alien communication devices. Veteran Commander Sung Ho, his weathered hands resting on the smooth metallic table, looked at the young recruits gathered around him. His eyes, deep and reflective, held memories of a conflict that would forever change how sentient species understood survival. On that distant planetary battlefield of Proxima 7, Captain Ji-Woo Park stood alone. The methane-rich atmosphere swirled around her combat suit, toxic winds carrying particles that would kill most biological entities within minutes. Her platoon had been scattered, communication systems destroyed, and hope seemed like a distant memory. The planet's surface looked like a nightmare landscape. Jagged rock formations jutted from purple-tinged ground, creating a terrain that seemed designed to break anything attempting to survive. Temperature fluctuations could range from freezing cold to scorching heat within moments. Most military strategists would have called this mission a suicide run. But Ji-Woo was not most soldiers. She checked her environmental suit systems. 2 of her team's primary cooling units were damaged, and oxygen recycling was operating at barely 40% efficiency. Any normal military unit would have requested immediate extraction, but humans were anything but normal. Using salvaged equipment from a destroyed reconnaissance drone, Ji-Woo began modifying her suit's thermal regulation system. Her hands moved with a precision that seemed almost supernatural, reconnecting circuits, rerouting power, and creating makeshift solutions that defied standard engineering protocols. Around her, the landscape shifted. Methane clouds moved like living entities, creating optical illusions that would disorient most trackers. But Ji-Woo's training had prepared her for environments that would break lesser beings. She calculated wind patterns, tracked minimal heat signatures, and understood the planet's brutal ecosystem better than most advanced scanning systems. Her communication device, cobbled together from broken equipment, suddenly crackled to life. Weak signals emerged. 2 of her team members were still alive. Somewhere in this toxic wilderness, Staff Sergeant Kim and Corporal Lee were waiting, hoping for rescue. The suit's internal computer displayed warning messages. Radiation levels were climbing. Structural integrity was compromised. Any standard military protocol would recommend immediate abandonment of the mission. But Ji-Woo understood something fundamental about human survival. Giving up was never an option. She began moving, each step calculated, each movement preserving energy and minimizing environmental exposure. Her modified suit absorbed and redirected toxic particles, creating a microenvironment that allowed survival where no other species could exist. Hours passed. The planet's multiple moons created strange shadow patterns, turning the landscape into a shifting maze of potential danger. Ji-Woo's enhanced visual systems tracked movement, identified potential threats, and maintained a constant state of tactical awareness. 2 kilometers ahead, she detected heat signatures matching her team's biological markers. The distance would exhaust most soldiers, but Ji-Woo's modified suit and extraordinary human endurance meant this was merely a challenge to be overcome. As she moved, the alien environment seemed to test her with every step. Methane geysers erupted randomly, creating sudden pressure changes that would crush standard environmental suits. Radiation levels continued to climb. Her suit's systems warned of imminent failure, but Ji-Woo continued. Her mind remained clear, her movements precise. She represented something more than just a soldier. She embodied the human spirit of survival, adaptation, and unwavering determination. When she finally reached her team members, they were barely alive. Corporal Lee had a fractured exoskeleton, and Staff Sergeant Kim's respiratory systems were failing. But they were alive. And where there was life, there was hope. Veteran Commander Sung Ho, watching the young alien recruits, saw their expressions change. Disbelief transformed into respect. They were witnessing a story that challenged everything they understood about survival. Ji-Woo Park was not just a soldier. She was a testament to human potential. The gravitational anomaly zone stretched before Lieutenant Hyun-Ki Kim, like a nightmare landscape of twisted physics and impossible geometry. Massive rock formations seemed to bend and shift, defying every known law of natural movement. The atmospheric pressure changed with each breath, making survival a moment-to-moment challenge. 12 hours earlier, their reconnaissance mission had gone catastrophically wrong. Communication systems had been destroyed by a sudden electromagnetic pulse that ripped through their advanced equipment like paper. Of the original 12-member team, only 5 remained. Hyun-Ki examined the team's remaining resources: 2 emergency medical kits, 1 portable power generator operating at 32% capacity, and a collection of personal survival tools were all they had left. Standard military protocols suggested surrender or waiting for extraction, but surrender was not in their vocabulary. Corporal Park Min-seo sat nearby, her hands working frantically to rebuild their communication device. Using fragments of destroyed equipment, she was creating something entirely new. Her fingers moved with a precision that seemed more like artistic creation than technical repair. The gravitational anomalies made movement treacherous. One step could send a person floating into impossible directions or crush them with unexpected gravitational pulls. The team moved carefully, understanding that each movement could be their last. Their environmental suits were failing. Radiation levels continued to climb, and the suit's internal systems were barely maintaining protective barriers. Any normal military unit would have given up hope. But this was a human team, and hope was their most powerful weapon. Lieutenant Kim watched as Sergeant Lee Jinwoo began collecting mineral samples from the surrounding terrain. Most would see random rocks, but he was gathering potential materials to enhance their suit's protective capabilities. His scientific background merged perfectly with pure survival instinct. Suddenly, a massive gravitational wave swept through their position. The team was thrown in different directions, their bodies tumbling through the strange landscape. Normal biological entities would have been crushed or torn apart, but they adapted. Corporal Park used her suit's emergency stabilization system, firing micro-thrusters to control her trajectory. Sergeant Lee used a piece of broken equipment as an improvised anchor, creating a temporary gravitational reference point. Their movements were choreographed survival, each action calculated and precise. Lieutenant Kim's mind raced. They had no way to call for help, no way to signal their location. The electromagnetic interference meant traditional communication was impossible. But humans were anything but traditional. Using the portable generator and fragments of destroyed communication equipment, Corporal Park began constructing a unique signaling device. She combined principles of quantum entanglement with basic radio wave technology, creating a communication method that defied current scientific understanding. Hours passed. Their suits continued to degrade. Oxygen recycling systems were operating at minimal capacity. Radiation protection was failing. Any standard medical assessment would have declared them dead hours ago, but they continued. Sergeant Lee discovered that certain mineral compositions in the terrain could be used to create temporary radiation shields. He began carefully extracting and processing these materials using their portable generator as a makeshift refinement tool. Lieutenant Kim monitored the team's condition. Physical exhaustion was evident, but their mental resilience remained unbroken. They communicated through minimal gestures, understanding each other's movements with a precision that went beyond verbal communication. As another gravitational wave approached, they prepared, not with fear, but with calculated precision. Their bodies moved as a single unit, adapting to the impossible environment around them. Corporal Park's communication device suddenly showed a weak signal. Something was working. A breakthrough that would challenge everything known about survival communication. 12 hours of continuous challenge had passed. They were battered, their equipment was failing, but they were alive. More than alive. They were proving that human survival was not just about physical endurance, but about mental adaptability. Lieutenant Hyun-Ki Kim looked at his team. They were more than soldiers. They were a testament to human potential. In this impossible environment, they were not just surviving, they were rewriting the rules of survival itself. The gravitational anomaly zone continued to shift and change, but the human team remained unbroken, undefeated. The mountain battlefield was silent except for distant explosions and the soft wind carrying ash and debris. Sergeant Mincio Lee sat surrounded by the remnants of her platoon, her hands trembling slightly as she checked their remaining ammunition and medical supplies. 24 hours earlier, they had been a full combat unit of 12 soldiers. Now, only 5 remained. The loss was devastating, but something extraordinary was happening. They continued to function with remarkable precision. Corporal Park Ji-hoon had lost his closest friend during the initial artillery strike. Normally, such a loss would completely destroy a soldier's combat effectiveness. But he channeled his grief into extraordinary focus, setting up defensive positions and maintaining team communication with mechanical efficiency. The enemy had superior numbers and advanced weaponry. Their tactical position was hopeless by any standard military assessment, but these soldiers didn't understand the word hopeless. Lee examined the psychological state of her remaining team. Trauma psychologists would have expected complete emotional breakdown. Instead, they displayed a complex emotional mechanism of shared grief, immediate adaptation, and collective survival. Private Kim Sung-woo, the youngest in the unit, had taken multiple shrapnel wounds. Instead of becoming a liability, he continued to provide critical reconnaissance information, using his damaged body as an additional observation point. His pain became a tool of survival. Their communication was minimal, but profound. A single hand gesture could communicate complex tactical information. Years of training and shared experience had transformed them into something more than a military unit. They were a living, breathing organism of survival. Another artillery strike approached. Most units would panic. This team prepared with cold, calculated efficiency. They understood that emotional reaction meant death. Survival required immediate, precise action. Corporal Park repositioned their defensive line, using terrain features with surgical precision. His movements showed no signs of the emotional trauma he was experiencing. Grief was processed but not allowed to interfere with survival. Sergeant Lee observed their collective behavior. They were grieving, but their grief was not a weakness. It was a fuel, transforming personal loss into collective strength. Each fallen comrade became a reason to fight harder, survive stronger. Their environmental suits were damaged. Communication systems were operating at minimal capacity. Ammunition was running low. By all military standards, they should surrender or be considered lost. But surrender was not in their vocabulary. Private Kim continued providing tactical information despite his injuries. Corporal Park maintained weapon systems with mechanical precision. Each soldier understood their role in the larger survival mechanism. The enemy expected them to break. Military strategy suggested they would collapse under psychological pressure. But human psychology was not a predictable algorithm. It was a complex, adaptive system that could transform pain into strength. Hours passed. Their situation became increasingly desperate, but their psychological resilience remained unbroken. They weren't just surviving. They were defying every known principle of combat psychology. Sergeant Lee's leadership was subtle but powerful. She didn't give long speeches or dramatic motivational talks. Her leadership was in her actions, her calm decision-making, her ability to transform personal and collective trauma into tactical advantage. As darkness fell, they prepared defensive positions. Their movements were synchronized, almost telepathic. Years of training, shared experiences, and mutual trust had transformed them into something beyond a traditional military unit. They weren't just soldiers. They were a living testament to human psychological adaptation. Another artillery strike approached. Distant explosions painted the night with violent light. But the small team remained calm, focused, ready. Their survival was not just about physical endurance. It was about the extraordinary human capacity to transform pain, grief, and impossible circumstances into a powerful survival mechanism. They would continue. They would survive. Not because of advanced technology or superior firepower, but because of something far more profound, the human spirit. The night consumed the battlefield, but their resilience burned bright, an unbreakable flame of survival. Corporal Jae-Sung Park's hands moved with lightning speed across the damaged combat suit. Surrounding him, the research laboratory looked like a battlefield of technological chaos. Broken equipment, scattered components, and complex molecular displays flickered with random data patterns. The current environmental cooling system used by galactic military forces was inefficient. Standard cooling mechanisms would fail within hours in extreme planetary conditions. But Jae-Sung saw opportunity where others saw limitations. His team had lost 3 members during their previous mission on the thermal extreme planet of Nexus 9. The planet's surface temperature could shift between -120 and +200 degrees within minutes. Standard cooling suits would disintegrate under such conditions. Using broken equipment from their previous mission, Jae-Sung began reconstructing the entire thermal regulation system. Most engineers would have requested new equipment. He was creating something entirely new from seemingly useless fragments. The primary innovation came from an unexpected source. During their previous mission, they had collected unique mineral samples that seemed to have extraordinary thermal absorption properties. Where standard scientific understanding suggested these minerals were useless, Jae-Sung saw potential. He began integrating these minerals into the suit's internal cooling mechanism. Traditional cooling systems worked through basic refrigeration principles. His design would actually absorb and redistribute thermal energy, creating a self-regulating environmental protection system. Nearby, Lieutenant Kim Min-ho watched with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Years of military training had taught him to trust established technological protocols. But something about Jae-Sung's approach suggested they were witnessing something extraordinary. Hours passed. Jae-Sung worked without rest, his hands moving with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Complex molecular structures were redesigned, suit components were modified, and traditional technological understanding was being completely rewritten. The suit's internal computer began displaying unexpected data. Thermal absorption rates were significantly higher than any known technology. Heat signature reduction wasn't just improved, it was revolutionary. Where standard suits could reduce heat signature by 30%, Jae-Sung's design promised an 87% reduction. Military researchers had spent decades trying to create better environmental protection systems. Jae-Sung was solving the problem using broken equipment and unconventional thinking. Lieutenant Kim began running diagnostic tests. Each result challenged everything they understood about thermal engineering. The suit could now operate in temperature ranges that would destroy standard military equipment within seconds. But Jae-Sung wasn't just creating a better cooling system. He was reimagining the entire concept of environmental protection. Traditional thinking saw suits as protective barriers. He saw them as adaptive living systems that could respond to changing environmental conditions. The minerals he had integrated weren't just passive components. They actively transformed thermal energy, creating a self-regulating system that could adapt to extreme conditions. It was less like technology and more like a living organism. As test results continued to come in, the research team's skepticism transformed into genuine excitement. They were witnessing something unprecedented, a complete reimagining of environmental protection technology. Jae-Sung's background was unique. Unlike traditional military engineers, he had extensive training in molecular biology and quantum physics. He didn't see technological problems as linear challenges. He saw them as complex adaptive systems waiting to be understood. The final prototype looked nothing like traditional combat suits. Its surface seemed to shimmer and change, adapting to surrounding temperatures with minimal energy expenditure. Where standard suits were rigid and mechanical, this design was fluid and responsive. Lieutenant Kim understood the implications immediately. This wasn't just a technological improvement, it was a complete paradigm shift in how humans approached environmental challenges. As final tests completed, the research team realized they had created something extraordinary. A cooling system that didn't just protect, but actively adapted and transformed. a technology that challenged everything known about environmental protection. Corporal Jae-sung Park had done more than create a new suit. He had demonstrated the fundamental human capacity for innovation, the ability to see potential where others saw only limitations. The laboratory hummed with potential, and at its center, a young engineer continued to rewrite the rules of technological understanding. The Grand Conference Hall of the Galactic Military Council was silent. Veteran Commander Sung-ho stood before representatives from dozens of alien civilizations, his weathered hands resting on the holographic display that showed humanity's extraordinary journey. Decades of interstellar conflict had revealed something unprecedented. Humans were not just another species, they were evolution personified. Each presentation slide told a story of impossible adaptation. Where other civilizations saw challenges, humans saw opportunities. Their technological and biological progression defied every known scientific understanding. The Proxima campaign demonstrated this most dramatically. A small human platoon had survived on a planet that would have killed most known sentient species within hours. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Commander Sung-ho's presentation showed how human military doctrine had completely transformed galactic conflict strategies. Traditional warfare was about overwhelming force. Human strategy was about adaptive intelligence, psychological flexibility, and innovative problem-solving. Their technological development happened at speeds that shocked other civilizations. What would take most species centuries, humans accomplished in decades. Their genetic engineering, communication technologies, and environmental adaptation capabilities were beyond comprehension. The alien representatives watched in stunned silence. Commander Sung-ho explained how human soldiers could transform personal grief into tactical advantage, how they could rebuild communication systems from destroyed equipment, how they viewed limitations as opportunities. One slide showed Corporal Jae-sung Park's revolutionary thermal regulation suit. Another displayed Lieutenant Hun-ki Kim's survival in the gravitational anomaly zone. Each image challenged everything known about biological and technological limitations. The most shocking revelation was human psychological resilience. Where other species would collapse under extreme stress, humans transformed their trauma into strength. Their ability to process emotional pain while maintaining operational effectiveness was unprecedented. Military strategists from various alien civilizations had spent years trying to understand human capabilities. Traditional analysis failed. Humans didn't follow standard evolutionary or technological progression models. Commander Sung-ho shared stories of human innovation, how they modified equipment in impossible conditions, how they created communication systems using primitive electrical components, how they turned seemingly hopeless situations into strategic victories. The presentation wasn't just a military report. It was a testament to human potential. Alien representatives from technologically advanced civilizations found themselves reassessing everything they knew about biological and technological development. Humans were not just another species. They were a force of nature. Their genetic adaptability meant they could modify themselves to survive in environments that would kill most known life forms. Their technological innovation happened at speeds that defied scientific understanding. Their psychological resilience transformed personal limitations into collective strength. The conference hall felt different as the presentation concluded. Something fundamental had changed in how these alien civilizations viewed humanity. Commander Sung-ho's final words resonated through the silent hall. Humans are not just survivors. They are evolution itself. The holographic displays showed images of human soldiers, battered, wounded but unbroken. Each image told a story of extraordinary adaptation. Each soldier represented something more than a military unit. They were living proof of human potential. Alien military leaders exchanged worried glances. Humanity was not just another species to be categorized or understood. They were a dynamic, unpredictable force that could change the entire galactic landscape. As the presentation ended, one thing became clear. The future of interstellar civilization would be shaped by human innovation, resilience, and extraordinary capacity for adaptation. The conference hall remained silent, but it was a silence filled with respect, fear, and profound understanding. Humanity had arrived,